Been so busy in Microsoft Flight Simulator lately, no wonder I missed it. And what did I miss? Well, Airfoil Labs have released their first aircraft for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And what's significant about that? Well, this developer has a huge reputation in the Xplane world for producing high-quality, ultra-realistic and detailed GA aircraft. They are, in my opinion, the A2A of Xplane, or perhaps even the PMDG of the GA world. Their Cessna 172 in Xplane is certainly up there in the top 2 or 3. And their King Air 350, well, I think it's the best out there at the moment. And a few days ago, they released the Bristell B23, a light sporty aircraft available in the marketplace for both PC and Xbox. This is the SimHanger channel. My name's Mark. Thanks for watching, and let's get started. The Bristell B23 looks very good, and full use of PBR and associated technologies has been used. But if we're being picky and have a closer look, it's clearly evident we've seen better, much better. This is certainly not up there with the likes of Coronado. Some of the edges are fuzzy and irregular. It's minor, but it's noticeable. Conversely, the texturing in the cockpit is fine, and what we would expect from an aircraft costing £20 or 25 or 26 US dollars. Let's quickly close the canopy and make preparations to get away and give this a test. Next, let's check that parking brake. That's on, and we can check the circuit breakers. Unfortunately, they haven't been modeled into the system and you can't interact with them. Next, let's head down to the lower panel on the pilot side and put on the master switch and bring this aircraft alive. And the primary flight display will initialize, and we can just make sure we've got adequate fuel. 2 tanks on this aircraft, left and right, and both half full. Plenty of fuel for our short excursion. Whilst we're here, one of the things I really like about this aircraft is the night lighting. So let's just adjust the time and put on the cockpit lighting. It's very atmospheric. Look at that. And with the dial you can vary the intensity. It's been very well done indeed. Back to the daytime, and let's carry on with our startup. Fuel switch to the left tank, and our fuel pump for start can go on. This aircraft has a choke, which is something we don't see very often, and something you'd only use if it was really cold. We'll use it today just to follow the checklist. Check that our prop lever is fully forward and that our throttle is at full idle. No need to crank the throttle in this aircraft for start. Next, we can put on our nav and our strobe lights. We're almost ready. Alternator 1 and 2 can now come on. And now, using the key, turn the ignition to start and she bursts into life. Airfoil Labs have included a complete and authentic sound set with this aircraft. Sounds vary depending on whether the canopy is open or closed. On the PFD we can just check that the oil pressure is starting to rise, which it is, and it's time now for us to put our avionics on. This is a fairly modern aircraft and comes with all the expected glass cockpit displays and navigational aids. Has an autopilot and it looks like fairly standard fare, so not sure how authentic that is. Flight planning, nav and comm data can all be entered via the Garmin units, and this can be done on either the pilot or co-pilot side. They're fairly comprehensive and includes just about everything you need to get you up and away. The ability to have split screen on either side is very helpful as well. Just adjusting the throttle slightly to get the RPM to about 2000, which is recommended. And this will just help warm everything up as we're going to be departing very shortly. Everything's looking good so far, so the choke can come off. Push it in and turn the handle, and the fuel pump can now come off. The airport is located on the top of Catalina Island, and it looks like we've got some low cloud blowing in. Handbrake off and just nudge the throttle forward slightly and she taxis very easy. This aircraft does have a steerable nose wheel. She's fairly easy to taxi, but she does require quite a lot of rudder input. Differential brakes are also very helpful. Heading now to the runway, flaps down 1 notch for takeoff. The windsock not showing too much wind today at all, which is good because it can get very gusty up here. Transponder to altitude reporting. Now holding short and time for landing lights to go on. The landing lights have a three-way switch: off, wig-wag as you can see here, and also static. We'll set them static for takeoff. Let's now line up runway 2222 for departure. We'll come to a stop, check our P&Ts, make sure everything's in order, and then we're ready to go. All checks are done, all looking good. Advanced throttle, holder on the brakes, and then release when throttle's at about 50%. Throttle's now all the way forward. For rotation we'll be looking for about 16 knots at this altitude with flaps at 1. "60 knots rotate." We're climbing quite nicely. I'm just going to leave the flaps in just for a little bit longer, help me with my initial climb. We're now above the immediate high ground, so coming back on the propeller, reduce that RPM, get it into the green zone, and tapping back on the throttle. Engine displays on the co-pilot side. Quite a bit more turbulence than I was expecting, but the aircraft is a pleasure to fly. She responds quickly and feels very stable in hand. We've just flown a few nautical miles offshore and now we're turning back and we'll head back to the airport. We'll also see how she handles herself during the stall. We're currently doing just about 100 knots. Not sure about maximum, I'd think it'd be around about 120 knots. 100 knots seems comfortable, and she remains very responsive at that speed. Let's now lift the nose up and see if we can stall her. That's a stall warning. Nose dropping, and she's dropping a wing. Pulling back on the flight stick now and using rudder, and yes, she corrects herself fairly quickly. If you're looking for something easy to fly and well behaved, well, this is it. Now coming in to land, I've pulled the throttle back, I'm a little bit high, and flaps are now full. Speed about 70 knots. As you see, the cloud is now moving in very quickly. Landing runway 04. Visibility decreasing by the minute. Bit of a bounce, that's probably because I was going a little bit too fast. We're now taxi to the terminal, but don't run away. This is the initial release, but there's a bug in the aircraft, and it's quite a significant one. Let's park up here, and we'll take a closer look. As is clearly evident, this aircraft doesn't have retractable undercarriage. Now I've relocated to another airport with a longer runway, and I've deliberately turned the engine noise right down so we can hear the other sounds. We're going to do a very quick takeoff, pull back on the throttle and land again. Once we take off, I'm going to exercise the gear lever on my Bravo throttle quadrant, and I've also done this on my keyboard as well, pressing the G key. Let's have a listen. I've just pressed gear up and I can hear gear up sounds. Now I'm going to press gear down. We're back down. I've landed with my gear down as I retracted and then deployed the gear using my Bravo throttle quadrant. Let's now do another quick test. I'm just going to use slew so that I can backtrack on the runway, make sure I've got adequate runway for takeoff and landing. I'll restart using Control E, and let's do it again, but this time I'm going to do gear up but not gear down. So with the gear up, I'm now going to attempt a landing. Bear in mind that gear up or gear down should have no impact on this aircraft as it has fixed landing gear. Yes, you guessed it. Even though we've got fixed landing gear, the aircraft has sunk into the runway. With this aircraft, if you inadvertently exercise the gear lever and leave it up, well, you're going to crash on landing. So my final thoughts. It's great to see Airfoil Labs coming into Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I'm sure that this bug can be fairly quickly ironed out. I've only tested it on the PC, I haven't tried the Xbox version, but I imagine it's going to be much the same. The aircraft modelling itself is fine, but the texturing detail seems to be too low a resolution. It could be a lot better. It's not awful, but I'm disappointed. Would have been nice to have some of the circuit breakers operational, and like the Sting, this has a parachute, but it's not operational, and I'd like to see that added as well. At $25 US, it's reasonably priced, but at that price, and in my opinion, we need a bit more attention to detail. If the developers do this, well, in my book, this is going to be a great addition to your hangar. But as it stands right now, sorry guys, I can't recommend this purchase. You're better off with the Sting. When and if things change, well, I'll certainly keep you updated. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you found this interesting and informative. Stay well, look after yourselves, see you soon, and bye for now.